So the Indianapolis Colts just got hit with more injury news affecting a key player that could involve him being placed on IR if push comes to shove. Meanwhile, the Texans did just place their wide receiver 1 on IR themselves. So I've got to talk about that, Jabrill Peppers being placed on the commissioner's exempt list, Aaron Rodgers speaking out about Robert Saleh getting fired, and more right after. Alright, first up, we have some not so great news for the Indianapolis Colts as it was announced today, just a bit ago, that their wide receiver 1, Michael Pittman Jr., is dealing with a back injury that will not only sideline him for multiple weeks, but could actually get him placed on IR. Pittman had over 1,100 yards receiving last year, and while he isn't leading the team in receiving yards this year due to Alec Pierce racking up 368 yards on just 13 receptions, good God, Pittman does lead the team in targets by quite a bit. Now, the tough part about this for the Colts is they could possibly go into this Week 6 matchup against the Titans without their starting quarterback in Anthony Richardson, starting running back in Jonathan Taylor, and now their wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. Anthony Richardson is practicing this week and reportedly moving around well as he comes back from that hip pointer. We'll see if he plays or not. If not, they got Flacco and he can ball. Then Jonathan Taylor didn't practice last week after suffering a mild ankle sprain the game before last, and his status for this week is currently unknown. And now Pittman is the next man hit with the injury bug. Again, I'm just glad Flacco was there. He's a very solid backup, but it's safe to say the Colts are still not where they want to be at 2-3. They are one of the most injured teams in the NFL, and now are potentially without several key weapons on top of all that. Thankfully, the Titans are their next opponent, and they are the Titans, but they're coming off a nice win over the Dolphins for what that is worth. Next up, we have some unfortunate news for Texans fans, and that is Nico Collins is headed to IR after suffering a hamstring injury in Houston's win over the Bills. Apparently, he entered Week 4 with a hamstring injury, not a serious one, but decided to play anyway, and hurt it even more on that 67-yard bomb of a score from CJ Stroud. He headed to the locker room and was pretty quickly ruled out for the remainder of the game. Afterwards, DeMeco Ryans described his injury as week to week, which made it sound like he would probably miss Week 6, but could have a shot to play as soon as Week 7. Well, sadly, that is not the case, and he will now miss at least the next 4 games as he recovers on IR. It's a big loss for Houston as Nico Collins was having a career year through these first 5 weeks, catching 32 passes for a league-high 567 yards and 3 scores. So yes, the loss is going to hurt, but thankfully the Texans are deep at the wide receiver position, and everyone else is going to have to step up. I expect Diggs will now take over as CJ Stroud's number 1 receiver. Then behind him, there's also Tank Dell, the veteran, Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie III, and even tight end Dalton Schultz. So definitely a bummer for Nico and the Texans, and while their offensive production may take a slight dip, they should be just fine while he recovers. Now, someone who is not fine is Patriots safety Jabrill Peppers. He was just placed on the commissioner's exempt list today after being charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, strangulation, and possession of a B-class substance that is believed to be cocaine. It's a pretty messed up situation, honestly, and sadly, yet another alleged domestic violence case in the NFL. Peppers was arrested on Saturday after police responded to a disturbance at a residential address where somebody, possibly a neighbor, called in and reported an altercation going on between 2 people. Well, those 2 people were Jabrill Peppers and a woman who claimed she had been dating him off and on for about 3 years. And again, the details of this, they do not look great or rather graphic. You can see some of them up on the screen. I hope he didn't do this because if he did, yikes, that is disgusting, and he's going to have to pay the consequences for his actions. And by the time the police arrived after all this allegedly happened, Peppers answered the door shirtless, nodding his head and telling the police, "I know what is going on," before they ultimately arrested him. According to the police report, the officers also confiscated a clear bag containing white powder, which later tested positive for cocaine. Peppers pleaded not guilty, though, on Monday morning and posted a $2,500 bail, being ordered to stay away from the woman, which he agreed to. His attorney, Mike Brofsky, basically said the whole thing is sketchy. The evidence sheds real doubt on the allegations, including videotaped evidence. So we will see what ultimately ends up happening here. One side against another. Is there video evidence? Not sure. And for what it's worth, the police did confirm that the woman was treated at the residence for injuries to her face and knees. Now, Patriots head coach Jerod Mayo acknowledged the situation today, saying he and the team are completely against domestic violence of any kind, as any rational human being should be against all of it. But he went on to say that Jabrill needs to go through due process.
Jabrill, has to go through the system, has to continue to go through due process. And what I will say is that the league has put him on the exempt list, and that will give us time to really gather more information. At this time, he is not in the building. We'll talk about that at a later time.
So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But for right now, Jabrill is going to be on the commissioner's exempt list for the time being. And for those of you who may not know what that means, basically in simple terms, the commissioner's exempt list is like paid leave while teams figure it out. It's a special player status available to clubs only in unusual circumstances. So it's like a placeholder for players who may be in some pending legal trouble that isn't yet resolved. This happened with Chiefs wide receiver Justin Ross last year. He's spent like 5 or 6 weeks on the list, and then it was kind of counted towards a suspension, and that's probably what will happen here with Peppers, depending on what they find. But only Roger Goodell has the authority to place players on this list, and only he can determine when to take them off. They do get paid while on it, and they can attend meetings, workouts, and receive treatment at their team's facility. However, they cannot practice with the team or attend games while on said list. Obviously, there's never a good time for this kind of situation to take place, but it's especially poor timing given the drama that's already taken place within the Patriots organization. I talked about this in a video last week, but there were some rumblings from within the team, reported rumblings within the team, that players were on the verge of a mutiny after losing 3 games in a row and still starting Jacoby Brissett while their 3rd overall pick Drake Maye sat on the bench. Well, the Pats just lost to the Dolphins on Sunday, dropping to 1-4 on the season after Jacoby Brissett threw for only 160 yards and 0 touchdowns. It was a pretty on-brand performance in their defense, as they're scoring just 12.4 points per game, which is second to last in the NFL. They've gained just over 250 yards per game, also second to last. They're 24th in third down percentage and dead last in red zone scoring percentage. Jacoby Brissett has led the charge in mediocrity, throwing for just 696 yards through 5 games and only 2 touchdowns. His 58.5 completion percentage is also 31st in the league, and he's taken the 3rd most sacks, which, to be fair to him, is more of an indictment of their god-awful O-line that PFF has ranked as the worst unit in the entire league. But fear not, Patriots fans, because your knight in shining armor has arrived. That's right, Gerard Mayo has officially named Drake Maye the starting quarterback as the Pats take on the Texans this Sunday afternoon. I have mixed feelings about this, as I'm sure a lot of Patriots fans do. Don't get me wrong, you're probably excited to see how Drake Maye looks in his first start. He was the 3rd overall pick for a reason, and he's certainly got a lot of raw talent and a cannon for an arm. I want to see if he can provide this offense with some kind of a spark. God knows they need it. And if his athletic ability adds a new dynamic to this offense, that pretty much can't get any worse. On the flip side, this might be one of the worst possible opponents to give him his first start against. Like I said, the Patriots O-line is garbage. Basura in Espanol. They've given up the 2nd most sacks with 19. Meanwhile, the Texans are 8th in sacks and feature one of the best edge rushing duos in the league with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Talk about throwing him to the freaking wolves. They're certainly not setting him up for much success, but the bar is pretty low in New England right now, and if he can just move the ball and not turn the ball over, the team would have to feel pretty good about his development moving forward. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers appeared on the Pat McAfee show today and talked about the firing of Robert Saleh. I talked about this whole situation in much greater detail in yesterday's video, so check it out if you haven't already. But basically, the Jets fired Robert Saleh yesterday after they fell to 2-3 on the season. Many, including myself, thought it may have been a bit premature considering Saleh is a defensive-minded coach, and the Jets have one of the best defenses in the league this year. So I would put a little bit more blame on Nathaniel Hackett, but okay. I mean, it really is the offense that has held this team back and is responsible for the slow start this year. So who did they choose to replace Saleh and help get the offense on track? Why, defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, of course. And this isn't even a shot at Ulbrich by any means. From what I understand, he's well respected within the building and has played a major part of the Jets' defensive success over the years. I just don't get the logic here. Why not fire Nathaniel Hackett, the OC, instead? Well, people began speculating that Aaron Rodgers may have had something to do with the firing of Saleh, considering there's been all kinds of rumors that the two didn't see eye to eye over the last year and a half. Meanwhile, Hackett was with Rodgers in Green Bay for 3 years from 2019 to 2021 and was brought in as the Jets coordinator last year after Rodgers signed with the team. So the two of them have a solid relationship from what I understand, while he and Saleh were believed to have some disagreements. Now, yesterday it was reported that Jets owner Woody Johnson made the decision to move on from Saleh solely on his own without running it by anyone else in the front office. Saleh was reportedly blindsided by the firing as well. It was pretty crazy. And the rest of the team, most of them were pretty blindsided by this also, including Aaron Rodgers.
It's interesting the amount of power that people think that I have, which I don't. I love Robert, and it was, one of those days yesterday.
And as far as rumors that Rodgers had anything to do with this, he offered a simple yet straightforward response.
As far as any of the ridiculous allegations out there, I'm not going to spend more than one sentence in response to it, and that is that I resent any of those accusations because they're patently false.
So there you go. I think many are going to choose not to believe Rodgers here and hold on to the belief that he had something to do with this. I mean, if you have the power to get people like Hackett hired as well as other teammates, how do you also not have some power to potentially get somebody fired? Now, my favorite conspiracy at the moment, if you want to call it that, is that Woody Johnson made the decision to fire Saleh after the Jets lost to the Vikings in London because he was the United States ambassador to the UK from 2017 to 2021, and he was pissed that his team lost in the UK. I kind of doubt that's the reason why, but it certainly is the more hilarious option to believe. Anyway, here's where I want to pass a question off to you guys. Do you think Aaron Rodgers had anything to do with the firing of Robert Saleh? From the appearance of him on the Pat McAfee show, it doesn't seem like it. So let me know your thoughts on that. Or are you in the camp of Woody Johnson acted independently here and made an executive decision all on his own? Let me know either way in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.